Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Today we're going to be talking about something that most of us have probably heard the term, and that is indigo. But have you heard about what indigo adults and other feminine souls are, and what's going on, and what constitutes their makeup? People might think of themselves that collectively we've come from the divine feminine energies causing spiritual wounds and self-defeating patterns. Now, if you're one of those people who ever wondered what your purpose is and why you feel disempowered and disconnected in a world that doesn't make sense to you, well, our guest today may hold the answers that you've been looking for. Her book is the Indigo Journal, Spiritual Healing for Indigo Adults and Other Feminine Souls. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Yoel Swan. Yoel, thank you for being on the program today.
Oh, hi, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
Steeped in books, art, music, cultural blend of shamanic and religious traditions, you've pretty much been involved in a lot of things that led you to writing this book, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been a long journey.
Now, tell us how this all started, what the interest was in going this direction with your life.
Well, I grew up feeling like I wasn't part of anything, like I didn't belong anywhere. Very different and alone, and so I would say that my journey really started there when I was pondering about why I could see life as energy and other people didn't, and why I cared about things that other people didn't pay attention to, and why I felt things so deeply. Why I was, because my life was okay, it was not traumatic or anything like that, but it was very intense in a lot of ways. So I think that's where the journey started, me pondering on those things. And of course, at some point, because of my relationships weren't what I wanted them to be or what I expected them to be, I decided to go into, psychotherapy and spend quite a few years there getting to know myself, and that launched me into a deeper exploration of consciousness. I was never a religious kind of person, even though I grew up in a religious country, but I was not interested in that at all. That didn't resonate with me, but the concept of consciousness, of something bigger, of that energy that I could perceive, that was beyond the physical, the material, that definitely became my passion. And then I met enlightened teachers who guided me through the exploration of the spiritual realms. And, slowly but surely, I was connecting all the pieces of my puzzle, but there was still something missing. And that came about during a grieving process, during my divorce, when I started remembering things, because I have that connection to the past. I can see the past quickly and easily. And memories of Atlantis and all sorts of things came up to my awareness to make me finally realize that the piece that I was missing was my soul type, that it was not a personality, conditioning, upbringing, alone, but that there was a deeper aspect that I needed to look into and delve into to help others recognize themselves as indigos and also feminine souls, because from there I discovered this feminine, masculine soul spectrum that led me to write the book to help others, recognize themselves and also understand why the world is the way it is, why it's such a mess, and what we are here to do to transform that.
Mm-hmm. Now, in describing what you have, do you feel that, like, for instance, children today, and I know that your title deals with spiritual healing for adults, but do you see that this day and age that perhaps children are more misunderstood to where, psychology gets in the way and says, well, no, they're this instead, rather than getting the deeper understanding, as you're describing, of a true soul that feels really life in a different way that other people do?
Well, I think that the new generations, these children are more feminine souls, soul types, and so they are more receptive and sensitive and intuitive, they have a non-linear cognitive perception, not non-cognitive. It's very feminine, intuitive. But because of that, and because they haven't been kind of adjusting slowly, like we have to the mess that we have now, which is a very rigid and masculine and militarized type of world, they are suffering immensely. So they are kind of expressing that confusion and anxiety, and in the sense of, what is this about? I mean, what is this? This doesn't make sense at all to me. And the response that they get is, of course, very masculine. It's okay. It has to be a reason, a logical, reason behind this, and maybe we can look into the brain, or we can find the scientific things behind what this behavior is expressing, because the world is so masculine, so overly masculine. And it's not that the psychological aspects aren't important. They're very important. They're part of the soul. They're part of the emotional layer of the soul and mental layer. But it's not. It doesn't stop there. We are deeper than that. We are more multifaceted and multi-layered than that, because we are infinite souls. We are sparks of consciousness. And so these children come with a stronger connection to that awareness, to that consciousness, but clash against, very sensory-oriented and materialistic and masculine world. So there's a big tug of war there for them, even more strongly than for us, for all the generations of indigos or feminine souls.
Now, it's interesting, as you were talking about in your book, that these people, these indigos, as you're describing, tend to feel out of place and generally have, I guess, things like depression and anxiety. What is it about that causes them to do this? Is that they don't understand how to communicate what's going on?
Well, it's an internal sense, because the world is very dysfunctional, and it's not quite tuned into the feminine principles of life. It's more focused on the external, the masculine, the success, the goal-oriented direction, the external manifestation of things. And the feminine is more internal. It's more how we connect to ourselves, to our true self, from within. It's more subtle in a lot of ways. And so for indigos who are feminine souls with certain masculine qualities, what happens is that this tug of war that I was talking about becomes really intense, because we have the feminine direction of our soul. It's always going to lead us or pull us towards the feminine qualities of love and compassion and empathy, and our connection to nature, to animals, to those aspects of life. And the masculine qualities that makes us more of a warrior type of soul, very goal-oriented and always seeking the truth, makes us feel like we are split between two strong tendencies. The feminine is going to be stronger in general, but because the world is so masculinized, our masculine qualities become aggravated, if you will. And so we feel this pull in different directions that keeps us feeling awkward, flooded, like we are not, that we're always making a wrong choice, that we don't know where to go. We have no sense of direction, no clarity about who we are, because we are, kind of split into different directions. And that creates a lot of anxiety. And then the sense of being flawed, like we are not right. We don't agree with the world. We don't want to just follow what everyone else is doing. We want to find our own way, which is, the indigo quality makes us feel out of place, separated, disconnected, and that and that we don't have a purpose here because the world is not what we think should be. What our vision of the world is, and we feel again disconnected, like we have no purpose here, like we can't find our place, and that leads us to depression, that sense of disconnection from others and from the world.
That's also interesting when you consider the whole thing, and that there must be a way that these people, I guess is the best way to put it, can find their way without being, I guess, too hurt. And you talk about a term known as a sense of otherness as an aspect of that ego that keeps us emotionally in the past. How could that be transformed, do you think?
Well, but the sense of otherness is like a coat that you put on as you grow up, when you're a child, and you don't realize that you're wearing anymore because it carries all the mental and emotional patterns that you have shaped through that process of growing up and forming an ego. And so it's the masculine aspect of the ego. The feminine aspect is more internal again. Is your inner voice, the sense that makes you feel, separate, individual. And the sense of otherness is what you acquire through your interaction with others. And growing up, that means all the people that are in control of your life, basically, because as children, we don't have much of a voice or choices. The world is such a big, chaotic place that it is quite scary in general. So those authority figures, those that have the control and the power, become our sense of otherness. We internalize the dynamics between them and the dynamics between us and them. And then we carry this coat, like I said, with all those patterns that kicks in every time we interact with others, with the world. Even with anything external, like if we have a project, it kicks in. And it becomes this inner bully that tries to hold us in the past. Why? Because the purpose of ego is to keep us separate, to give us the illusion that we're separate, that we are individualized, that we are the doers and the owners of our experience, as opposed to just vehicles of consciousness. And so this illusion that consciousness creates to experience life and this creation in individualized form is shaped for the first years of childhood, and so its mission is to keep us there. And so it becomes really a strong, congealed kind of sense, that's why I call it a sense of otherness, because it's not really a separate voice or figure that we can recognize. It's just, it becomes our self-perception. And it tends to keep us in the past by coloring our present with past experiences, those past patterns, those past dynamics. So we just keep repeating kind of the same over and over, even though the players in our movie change, the feelings and the end results of what we do or what we try tend to be the same, and requires great effort, great discipline, great determination to break free from those patterns. And of course we can do that. The best way is, of course, to look within and strengthen that sense of self, that feminine inner voice that links to our intuitive wisdom and to our higher self. And then also find a center, a way to anchor ourselves in our creative power. Anything creative is going to give us that centeredness that allows for us to observe and make clear decisions in relation to how we respond to the world, the choices we make, and how we perceive ourselves in the world and accomplish, the goals and the things that we want to accomplish. But it definitely requires an emotional effort, the emotional effort to stretch beyond that sense of otherness and kind of start, disempowering it, because it becomes an inner bully. It becomes a blockage that we sabotage our lives with if we're not paying attention, or if we don't have the strength and the loving support around it.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you see this day and age, as you were mentioning, this generation seems to be more feminine, which means the possibility of coming back into balance is perhaps at our fingertips. How does this look, and is this a good thing?
Well, it is a good thing because we have reached the extreme of masculinity. We have reached the end of a masculine cosmic cycle. So in this extreme, we see, we witness all the suffering, injustice, all the imbalance in the world, and because the feminine has been devalued. So we put more value into money and material gratification, sensual gratification, power, and those things, instead of creating community and creating balance and connecting to each other and seeing each other and supporting each other, which are, of course, feminine qualities. And so it is very important that now that we're shifting and we're moving towards the feminine cycle, because we've reached the end of this masculine one, that we start really embracing and valuing those feminine aspects in ourselves, because we all carry feminine and masculine. It's the interplay of those two principles that creates everything and helps the universe and consciousness expand. So we need to start nurturing those aspects more in ourselves, so that we can bring more of that energy into the world, shift our perception, balance our perception, and in doing so, we're leaving that energy footprint for the collective unconscious to start shifting as well and being more permeated with the feminine. So we create that balance between feminine and masculine. And for feminine souls, this means embracing and accepting everything that we are, everything that has for a long time made us feel very vulnerable and weak, kind of irrational or too emotional or too sensitive and so on. And balance that with the mental self-discipline and creative focus to integrate all of who we are, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, because we are all of that, and we don't feel strong and clear about who we are and what our life is about until we start aligning those layers of our soul. And it's the same thing outside in the world. When we are putting so much into the masculine and investing our attention, our time, our energy in kind of making that bigger, or exploring that, we are leaving behind many aspects of ourselves that we need to feel fulfilled and to feel happy and to enjoy our life. And so we need to balance from within and also without through the choices that we make in the world.
Now, as you were talking about the ego earlier, you also, in your book, you say this is a virtual layer of the mind. And what I find interesting about that is that technology today has created situations, especially with the younger generation, to where they're disconnecting from their families at earlier and earlier ages, but yet they're going out and forming their own communities. And I think it's through the illusion of what technology has provided, that instant gratification, that world, the way we want to see and experience that, is at our fingertips, and we believe this. What do you think the aspects of technology, how do you think that has affected what we're talking about here?
Well, it definitely has a huge part in this. The technology as we are seeing it evolve now is the result of us also moving towards the age of Aquarius, the new planetary cycle. Because the energy of Aquarius is of community, communication, connection in terms of community. That's why we have the internet. That's a very Aquarian manifestation. And so it allows us to connect to each other instantaneously, right? Like when we grab a cell phone and we're right there, or we go online and we can chat with someone on the other side of the world. But because the world is still kind of stuck in this excessive masculinity, those in power are all going to try to use everything to remain there. It's like the collective sense of otherness, if you will. So they're trying to keep us in the past. So instead of utilizing or promoting, I would say, the use of technology to really connect and communicate and find solutions and create a better world, which of course we are also doing, but in a lower scale, they're trying to use our past wounds, our fears, our kind of ignorance or our blind spots to promote the same sense of disconnection that keeps us disempowered and keeps them in control of things. So it's the same process that we see outside that happens on the inside, in each one of us. That sense of otherness that becomes the bully kind of separates and compartmentalizes our lives and never gives us the sense of being connected and being part of this whole universe and recognizing the incredible creative power that we have and that allows us to shape absolutely anything that we set our mind to, because we are compartmentalized, and that's its purpose, to keep us there in the past. And it's the same thing outside, the mass media and the use of technology and the news and all the stuff that we are continuously bombarded with, the marketing of all sorts of things, tends to keep us or tries to keep us in that sense of being vulnerable or fearful or, always kind of worried or stressed about something else, instead of having the ability to recognize that, I can create whatever I want, so I can just start investing in what I want to create right now, focusing on what makes me happy, what makes me joyful, and the things that I want for myself, for my family, for my community, and for the world. And of course, there are people who are doing that. They're really focused on that. There's these creative visionaries bringing in new technologies and more sustainable ways of living. But the old energy, from the past, from this excessive masculinity, is trying to still draw our attention and our energy in the same direction as before. But we are all awakening. So what I'm trying to say is that the use of technology has both sides. You can use it to connect, to explore, to gather information, to share your view, your vision, your perception, and you can also use it to disconnect and feel, depressed and, focus on what's wrong and what's negative and so on. The choice is very individual.
It's interesting when you think about this generation. You hear a lot of people tend to say, well, this is a generation of children that have been cuddled. They've been nurtured to believe they're special, things like that, and they're protected, so they don't really get out there and experience the world a lot of times. You might even at times talk about hearing people say things like, well, they don't have the work ethic. We get the feeling that things should just be handed to them if there's any kind of an effort that needs to be made toward them reaching their goals and desires. Well, they just don't want to have a whole lot to do with it, things like that. What do you say to something like that?
Well, I think that's the old paradigm. life is hard, and we have to struggle, and we have to, get used to this hardness, because that's the overly masculine view. It's very physically oriented, hard work and struggle, and I can only rely and believe in things that are tangible, but these newer generations, because they're more feminine in nature, on a subtle level, on a spiritual level, it's not gender-based, they bring in a different perception as well. It's like, well, no, life doesn't have to be hard, but what you have created here, what you're doing with life, does not make sense to me. And I'm struggling with it right now, but they're also being led internally through their own soul types to find solutions and start transforming things. First, they have to question them. We all have to question things to kind of look for alternatives, right? And so those rigid structures that have become part of our collective sense of otherness that say, no, this is the way life should be, and we have to believe in these, political, economical, educational, family structures that we have relied on for so long, are trying to maintain that, and which is the past, because we're really moving towards different cycles. The planetary cycle, which is, about individuality, novelty, if you will, and community, a sense of community, and the feminine cosmic cycle, which is also about connection, love, compassion, awareness, and a more fifth-dimensional perception of life, so that we can really harness our creative power to shape the world that we really want. And so it's that same struggle. I don't have to believe my past. I cannot go back and change it, but I don't have to keep believing the same stories and the same perception that has led me to this place where I'm not happy. And, I see a lot of injustice and suffering. I can start believing something else and creating something else that, that makes more sense and connects me to who I really am, deep inside, within me, not as a self-image that fits society, but as an infinite soul with the potential to experience this physical life in a completely different way.
And, it's interesting you should say that, because there was a point in your book that I wanted to go ahead, if I may, and share this with our listeners here. And you say in your book, and this is the Indigo Journals, that asserting your spiritual feminineness entails finding your place and purpose, as well as making peace with the world. If you're not at peace, you're bound to struggle. Hence, that's what we were just talking about, the idea you got to work hard and struggle and the whole thing to get whatever it is you want. And then you continue on to say that's just how this divine game works. The key to living a joyful life comes down to how much you invest in restoring a loving, undistorted self-perception, and how you manage your energy in in your interactions and goals. And I think right there that really pinpoints exactly what you've been talking about, that if we can, begin to open our hands and begin to perhaps learn from these people that are known to be indigo, how they have developed a heightened intuition. In other words, they begin to live from their gut instinct a lot more, rather than how somebody else says they should. That this could change a lot of things for a lot of people, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I encourage all feminine souls who are awakening right now, and anyone who's willing to look and nurture their feminine side, to emulate an indigo archetype. Why? Because it holds those feminine qualities that are so needed in the world, but it also has the masculine aspect that makes us goal-oriented. So it's not just I'm going to be receptive and passive and hoping that things are going to, get better. I'm actually going to do something about it. And what we do is not necessarily rallying up the masses and trying to convince everybody to act and behave differently, but it's satisfying, fulfilling my soul and who I am as a unique expression of consciousness, to share that, to contribute that to the world, so that the collective unconscious becomes more aware of what it is like to be loving and compassionate and taking care of yourself and taking spiritual responsibility for who you are and what you create in the world. You know, the energetic footprint that you leave, and also what the truth is really about. You know, that truth-seeking nature that is a feature of indigos is, what is the truth? What is my mind telling me? Do I believe everything that my mind says, you know, which of course includes my sense of otherness? Or do I start questioning and really creating the beliefs that I know are going to take me to a better place, to a higher perception, and to a better life for me and for others? And this is where we're at right now. Are we going to believe the past and repeat the same things, or are we going to revisit the past, heal the past, and take responsibility for what we are creating from here on out? So that's why I strongly suggest to look into, you know, the indigo archetype for indigos who are still struggling and suffering and need to heal their wounds, of course, because we have been very wounded. The whole feminine principle has been very wounded. And for feminine souls in general, and those willing to nurture their feminine aspects, to integrate those two, you know, the feminine and the masculine, so that we can bring balance into our life, leave the past behind, learning from it so that we don't just repeat it, but leaving it behind because we need to really start creating something completely new.
Very nicely said. The book is The Indigo Journals. Our guest today, Yoel Swan. Yoel, if you could, for our listeners out there, could you go ahead and maybe give out a website where they can find out more about the book and your work as well?
Sure. The site for the book is theindigojournals.com, and they can learn a little bit more about it there. They can also purchase it through there on Amazon and other places like barnesandnoble.com. They can find the book in, you know, very specialized bookstores because it's a very, you know, very niche kind of book. And they can learn about me and connect with me and learn about also the services that I offer as a spiritual counselor and coach and healer at soulguidedcoach.com. And I encourage them to, you know, join my mailing list and get notices and updates and weekly soul-guided inspiration for, you know, for their lives, to understand themselves better and others, and also create a life that they really want, they really love, they resonate with on a deep soul level. So again, those two sites are theindigojournals.com for the book, and my main business site is soulguidedcoach.com.
Well, Yoel, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today to describe this interesting thing that's going on here in the world, and I feel very encouraged by what you've shared with us today, and that we're probably moving in a better direction where a lot of us can actually enjoy life rather than struggle and swim upstream against it.
Yeah.
Thanks again for being on the program.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
You bet. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. You can discover more by visiting us at beyond50radio.com, with the number 50, that is. We encourage you to subscribe to our weekly e-newsletter so you can stay updated on what's going on in Beyond 50 and what's coming up, and which you can share with others as well. We can also be followed on Twitter at Beyond 50 Radio, as well as Facebook. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.